the thing that I've noticed that we played a clip of you talking about if Theo Von had an opportunity to interview Hitler. That was very funny.
Thank you.
And we have a clip, I don't think we'll play it right now, of you on the Howie Mandel show, talking, which has been traveled a little bit, about talking about the sort of anti-woke contingency of comedy.
Yeah.
And I want to get into that, but it's what I find fascinating, and it was really, I feel like Howie Mandel was not prepared for that that conversation.
Well, he's like a classic late boomer who, they lock into just the surface ideas, which is shallow, and they don't have any conversation deeper than that. And it's not uncommon. He's not living in the world of discourse or even politics. He's a rich guy that's sort of like, I just want to stay busy. And then, they all get this kind of like, well, people should be able to say whatever. It's like that. It's not even about that anymore.
Was it ever, though? I mean, it's not like you're going to get taken off. This is not like Lenny Bruce getting arrested. It's just about audiences saying, hey, man, I don't like what you're doing.
Well, it's about it's just straight up about representation in marginalized communities, vulnerable people. And it's like we don't have to break it all down, but and I know it was never just about the words, but ultimately these guys were marks for the right-wing propaganda machine and absorbed by their agenda and spearheaded, what was in their eyes, I talk about in the special, this ability to say words they wanted to say, but they used anti-woke to dismantle all progressive policy for everybody.
Yeah.
So it's partially on them, and I can't separate it. Whether they were willing collaborators or just grifting for themselves. I mean, it's like fuck them.
It was interesting when he said that he doesn't think comedians have that kind of power. Literally the day before stories come out about the White House wanting to ask Joe Rogan to please stop talking about Epstein, and let's talk about, because the thing that I find fascinating about this era, aside from the sort of the right-wing influence with these comedians, is when we were on Air America, when we first joined in 2004, there was a complete, not total, but a pretty complete lack of comedians being political. Like literally all of the people who were political in comedy probably worked at Air America, as a writer. Crimmins was there at that time, and it's completely different now. I mean, it changed over the course of, I don't know if it was from social media or the nature of the world, but I just remember in 2004, 2005, the intense pressure from Janine's management, my management at that time was like, what are you doing now? Are we done with this? Or, and other comedians going like, what are you doing?
I think that, I really think that political comedy in general was always a niche thing. And the guys that did it, I mean, historically, there's only a handful at any one time. And most of the politics, going on, most of the political comics of that time who were strictly political, who do that, I mean, just to say political comic, it's kind of boring. And I don't know that I was ever a political comic, but it has been my responsibility to myself to address it for at least a portion of the show, to show where I stand and offer my perspective on that, whether you agree with it or not, or whether it's well informed or not. But I never considered myself a political comic. And in the last three specials, they're almost structured like that there's going to be this section where I'm going to deal with that. And then we do the other stuff, personal, dark stuff that's a little lighter. But political comedy, I mean, even back in the 80s, dude, I mean, remember it was like Will Durst, Jimmy Tingle, Barry Crimmins, and that was it.
But I'm not talking about political comedians. I'm talking about comedians actually even engaging in politics.
Yeah, but people don't like it. It requires an engagement with the narrative, and then once you sort of parse that, how do you make that funny? Comedians in general, I'm not saying all of them, but they're and most people now, they don't have a big picture. They have a reactive engagement with bits and pieces of shit that, you know, pop their endorphins, and then they repeat clickbait. And yet the depth of it is not understood. And now you have comics. The other shift too with the right-wing political comics is that there's a blurring of the line of comic and commentator or influencer. All of a sudden, within the last 10 years, you have comedians who are like, you know, talking about, you know, China relations. And it's like, okay, I guess that's part of the job. I don't know when that happened, but
I mean,
what?
I mean, Air America was
Oh yeah,
certainly
so we
part of
did
that.
it. Another thing, it's our fault. Okay.
Well, I mean, I don't think there's necessarily something wrong with it. Obviously, that's what I do. I don't know that I'm a comedian. I feel like
You're
I'm
not.
more of like a political commentator who's mildly amusing.
You're very funny.
But I think, what interests me more is that we started in a time where showbiz people, including comedians, were almost actively disinterested. And over the course of that time, it's very different.
Yeah, but it was always a divisive thing. I mean, the idea was that, you know, if you're going to be an entertainer, you know, why alienate this group of people? I mean, it was always
Right.
calculated. It wasn't, you know, it's not some mystery. And also to speak in depth about politics, I'm usually over my head, and it's taken me a long time to just be broad enough from however much I'm informed to make statements that I think are based in my beliefs. I mean, when I was on Air America, or even on our show, you know, I was out of my depth in a lot of ways, just with, you know, keeping on top of the narrative and being able to sort of critically understand it. So I don't claim to do that. But I think a lot of people now, because of the advent of never-ending bullshit information, they claim that they can do that. And the right wing has opened up the sort of expanded the minds of fairly shallow people into believing that they can debate, that they have a point of view, and that it's based in this very slippery slope of evolving bullshit that gets them worked up. So in terms of the left, I don't know. I think in the special, I did a pretty good job of trying to sort of balance and take a few shots at myself and vis-a-vis the people in the audience who are mostly, you know, leftists or, you know, lefty people. And I think it sort of worked. But I don't know. We're not known to be hilarious, you know?
Wait, what? What do you mean?
Yeah, like when
you
you
and
think
I,
of like,
or
no. I'm just saying that when you have like the idea of like a political comic, when we were doing Air America, without naming names, there were like 2 or 3 people that were doing, you know, lefty political comedy. And it is so niche and almost impossible to make entertaining or to make mainstream. You know, the only thing I can say about what I've been doing over the last decade or two in terms of the comedy is that I know that this special has a point of view politically, does not provide, you know, I'm not being self-righteous or trying to answer questions, but I do know that it is a mainstream special, that I believe there's something in there for everybody. And whether that'll deliver the message to people that won't hear it, that's not the issue.
Yeah,
I'm
not talking about political comedians as a different species. I'm talking more about comedians
people afraid
being
to talk about
politics. Yeah,
yeah. And now they totally are. But now we got a problem. I mean, you know, until people realize and adjust to the fact that we're living in an authoritarian country, you know, which I don't think a lot of people, again, big picture, don't frame it that way.
No.
But then it becomes, there's a self-censorship that happens. And the thing I was saying right after he was elected is like, dude, it was, you know, 75 million against 77.5 million. It's not like, you know, you have to censor yourself. You're going to be talking to a room that at worst is going to be 50-50. So why are you going to lose your balls now?
You mean in terms of like people who are arguing against? Well, I mean,
That's right.
We're living in an authoritarian era.
So Marc Maron went on Sam Cedar's show, and the trashing of the Roganverse and the anti-woke comedians continued. Now, I made the video of which Marc Maron got into the heated argument with Howie Mandel over the comedians doing crowd work. And some of the comments were, that wasn't that heated. Well, watching this video, I think you see where Marc Maron's headspace is at. Because he unloaded on Howie Mandel. Poor Howie Mandel. I like Howie Mandel, and I like Howie Mandel's podcast, but damn. Just went off on Howie, but so Maron is doing this because he's got a new special coming out, Panicked. And look, let's keep it real. Maron knows what he's doing to some degree, so he had to gin up some eyeballs to go watch his special. And even in the special, he took a shot at Theo Von. Now, what's Maron going to do because he's ending his podcast? Look, you never really got that much trashing of other people out of Maron's podcast to begin with. He mainly saved that for Instagram Live. And I kind of made him stop doing that on Instagram Live because other people, it started with other people, but then I would have my notifications every time Marc went live on Instagram Live, and I just hit his live chat and just asking questions about Joe Rogan, and that's all you'd have to do. And Maron would just go off and trash him, and then I'd make the video and upload it. This was like 4 or 5 years ago. And the last time Maron said, I got to watch what I say here on Instagram Live because there's a guy who uploads it, and I have to deal with that. So, but now he's probably going to return to doing that. I don't know, but let me know your thoughts in the comments.